Before we jump into the next episode of That Podcast in Hutch, I wanted to give you just a little brief background on this, particularly if you're not from the Hutchinson area. I thought it might be useful to give you some background. There's this project in Hutchinson that's been going on, the Woody Seat Freeway Project, and it's this kind of weird bridge that goes over part of town and connects to South Hutch. Used to be part of State Highway K96. They built a bypass around town, so now that's reverting back to the city of Hutchinson's control. Problem is it's a bridge, it's expensive to maintain, and we're on the hook for it now, so we're exploring some options on how to manage that going forward. There are several different options. All of them have benefits and all of them have cost, and it's one of those situations where policymakers are trying to make the next best decision they can given the circumstances. But in this, there's a group of people in the Southwest Bricktown community, which there are houses that are actually underneath that overpass and in the areas adjacent to that. And they are particularly affected by this. And through this process, they've maybe at times felt like they weren't consulted enough about how it might affect them. One thing that has been of particular concern is that it would split Avenue B in half, and it would make it kind of inaccessible. You could get across, but you'd have to walk down to a traffic control area. So there's a lot of concern about that. But I don't really want to focus for this episode on what the problems were or what was, what the problems were with each of these options or what wasn't done right or anything like that. What I really want to focus on is how a group of people affected by a project decided to work together, come together, and they're still not all on the same page, but they're in the process of navigating this. And they came to the city, they asked for more time. They said, we want to be able to come with our community's ideas on this and our recommendations. And the city listened to them. And I think as you hear me talk to Cecilia Pina, who spoke at the city council on behalf of the Southwest Bricktown, what I hope you'll really take away is the sense of how important it is for communities to kind of organize and come together and bring a voice to the table, but also how it's not a short process. It takes a lot of effort and some things that don't look like advocacy, some things like community building, some things like being neighborly and making sure that people in the community know each other and have events to go to share in life together. Those things build that sense of community. And then when that community needs to advocate, some of those pieces are already in place. So I hope that you'll enjoy this episode. I know I enjoyed speaking with Cecilia and learning about her advocacy and some of the conversations that have taken place in Southwest Bricktown. But I hope when you're done listening, maybe you'll think about how you could apply some of the lessons from her and from what's happening in this community to your community or to your issue that you'd like to advocate for in front of people who are making decisions about these things. So with that, I'll let it go, and I hope you enjoy the conversation with Cecilia. Hey everyone, this is That Guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. Today I have a guest with me who's been really involved in a very delicate issue here in Hutchinson. And the reason I wanted to have Cecilia on today is because some of the work that she's been doing with the Southwest Bricktown neighborhood really demonstrates to me what can happen when a group of people decide that they're not just going to sort of accept what is happening to them and decide that they're going to insist that their point of view be considered. And so I'll introduce Cecilia, and then we'll kind of move into the history of this topic because there's a lot of ground to cover there. But Cecilia, thanks for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
So to kind of set this up for listeners, we have this issue with the Woody Seat Freeway, which is a series of bridges that goes over part of town, over the Arkansas River, and into South Hutch. It used to be part of the state highway system until they turned 96 into a bypass outside of town. That left 96 under city control and also city costs. And it's really deteriorating, and there's been a conversation over the last year or so about how to solve this problem. Really expensive to keep the bridge in place. and there are a handful of options that we've looked at that could solve the problem, all of them with varying degrees of cost, both short-term and long-term. Tell me a little bit about some of those conversations around the Woody Seat Freeway and how it affects specifically your neighborhood in the Southwest Bricktown area.
Well, our area is called Southwest Bricktown. From my understanding, it goes from C Street all the way up to, I believe it's 7th Street, and from Halsted to, I guess it would be Main Street. I'm not, I've had to ask several times to get that map so I can remind myself, but let's say it's around that area. A lot of the people that live on B Street are concerned that the option to have the roundabout is going to be closure of that particular bridge. They would be cut off from downtown and their neighbors, the school. The school is no longer used as an elementary school, but it's still a source where people go and get some things that they need, education wise.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of used as a community center also at the same time. So we feel like that if we were cut off by that we would lose disconnection with the city.
So on that, we have basically the city was presented with 5 different options on how to address this issue.
Yes.
One is to basically rebuild the bridge as it is and everything would stay the same. And my understanding is that carries the highest cost and the highest long-term cost. Another would be to cut the bridge off at Avenue F so that you could get into town. That would leave the rest of the streets open. C and B Street would remain open. But there are some concerns with the railroad that's there and access to emergency vehicles to and from that part of the city and South Hutchinson. Another 2 options have a roundabout, still closes off your streets, and then there's a couple of options that are just basically dead ends into Avenue A, both of which still cut your streets off. And I want to make sure I'm clear with listeners about the core issue here. The core issue is around Avenue B being basically separated so that the east side of what was Woody Seat would be separate from the west side of Woody Street. And this is a small but pretty tight and pretty cohesive neighborhood where a lot of people walk and bike between relatives' houses, between Avenue A School, as you indicated. Talk to me a little bit about the makeup and I guess the character of the neighborhood.
I don't know if it's that so much now because a lot of our elders have passed, but there's still a lot of involvement. It's a strong involvement. One of them was being, like I said, Avenue A School. Well, that's still considered our...
kind of the city center,
yeah,
right?
A city center. There is a lot of concerns and issues about, like you said, not being able to walk. There's a lot of walkers and elderly, disabled people that use this artery that's being Avenue A and Avenue B that walk, and it's a convenience for them. We do have the transit that's on B Street, but a lot of them still walk to that area, or they have spots where they get picked up. That's what our concern was. When we came to the city for that, they said that there were sidewalks that were going to be available, that they've looked at that. But there were still concerns for us because there's a bike trail right now that leads from Avenue A going down to A Street all the way down to Severance.
That's right.
So that's a concern. It's just the connection, losing the connection for that. The transit, yes, it's used a lot, but I just think that the roundabout being in that area, they said that there's still going to be a lot more safe issues than unsafe issues with the roundabout. We still beg to differ for that. Yeah, that might be true, but the connection, just losing the connection with the east to west, south to north, that's what our concerns are.
So in the neighborhood, the big concern was that it was this kind of split in the
Yes.
neighborhood, right? It's just splitting the neighborhood in half and making it harder for people to get from one side of the neighborhood to the other when they may have friends or relatives or services that they need on one side or the other.
Correct.
Okay. So one of the things that's interesting about this is that the city's been talking about this. There's been a lot of conversations. They applied for a couple of grants that weren't awarded to the city, but it looked like at the beginning of February the city was prepared to make a decision and go with the roundabout option.
Yes.
And it's at that point that you came to the city council on behalf of a group of residents in Southwest Bricktown and talked to the city council about your concerns and basically got them to hold off on making that decision until there could be further study. Talk to me a little bit about your involvement in that, and also the conversations with other Southwest Bricktown residents about their concerns and why they felt it was important to advocate for themselves at the city.
Well, that's really strange that you say that, because from what comments were made that this has been an ongoing issue and discussion for 3 years. That was a surprise to me, because I didn't realize with the COVID, it's a true statement. We became involved because the concerns were, like you said, the closing of Avenue B. I was approached by some of the community members of Southwest Bricktown saying that I was the chosen one to be the spokesperson. And I was pleased too, because I had some concerns also. We gathered as a committee, for Southwest Bricktown, just our members in our Southwest Bricktown. We were notified by Hutch Harmony, and just most recently, the NAACP asked us for a meeting, and they wanted to discuss it also. They were in attendance of both meetings at the city council, City Hall. And we got together, and we all had the same feelings about the issue. We got busy, and before I knew it, my task force committee grew 3 times. So I was really impressed, and I thought, well, okay, I'm glad to hear we sat down and we threw our ideas out on the table. We came to the conclusion of what we wanted and what we needed to do, and it came together all on its own. It still chose me as a spokesperson, which I'm pleased, because I've always been involved in the community, and that's what I wanted. That's my main goal, is to get community involvement and to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. I'm not saying to go and protest at City Hall, but our voices need to be heard. And like I told the city council members, we're your boss. You represent us. You need to lead us the way we want to be led. And in order to do that, we have to have an open, transparent community involvement to where we can come to understand each other and work together, rather than pull forces apart and have that negative ion in there rather than having 2 positives.
Has there been, not only in this process but in other areas, a feeling that there are neighborhoods or communities that aren't being sought out or aren't being heard in some of these discussions?
Yes. Steve Garza, which is a city council member, his district is the southeast area. We've gotten a couple of people that are from his area involved, which I'm glad. We haven't reached out too much, but it's been on the news and it's been vocally heard. I encourage everybody, hey, come and sit in on our meetings, which there was a meeting. They came out to Southwest Bricktown, and we talked to the engineers of the city, and they came out and did that. Not too many people from the northeast side or northwest side came out. There was some at the city council meeting, but they didn't come to our meeting, and it was an open invitation. That's what we want. We want an open door policy to where we can work together. And maybe there have been some opinions, in those areas, but they haven't came to us and joined forces with us so we can have a meeting to see what everybody's feelings are.
Now, even within the Southwest Bricktown neighborhood, you guys, even now, you're in the process of trying to establish what plan you guys like,
right?
Because there's still a little bit of division in that, right? About which plan might be best. There's
yes.
a couple of different voices in that. But in your mind, is that an important part of the process to make sure that even though the community might have different ideas, at least there's an effort to kind of get the community behind an option and then present that to the city?
Yes, and you're right. Even in our Southwest Bricktown area, among our members and our neighbors, there's a division. There's half that want option 5. There's half that want option 4. So, which is fine because they're voicing how they feel about the issue, and that's going to happen. So, I think that's the only way to do things. To make sure everybody has a voice.
And to be clear, option 5 is the one that eliminates the bridges, routes traffic off onto Avenue F. Option 4 is keeping Woody Seat as it is.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. During your presentation to the city, Natasha Iverson Russell also presented, and she shared some information about the history of how Woody Seat Freeway became a thing anyway. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Natasha Everson is of Hutch of Harmony. She's from that group. When she called the meeting, their group called the meeting, she educated us about the coming of Woody Seat Freeway. She named the person that was behind it. She told us a little bit of history of the Frank Hart Bridge, and how there used to be another bridge that was, I can't remember the name of that right now, I'm sorry, but she just gave us a world of information and presented it at the city council meeting. And then she also said that, which we talked about at our meeting, that we want to reinvest in our downtown area on the south side of town. She said that her group has 3 things that's going on right now to where it can attract historical places that they're trying to get to. They're going to get grants to see if they can have those things done. And I thought that would be great, because then we can, and that's what part of the issue is too, is that part of town is neglected. Mm-hmm. And with her working in that area, and then with the overflow of traffic coming through the Frank Hart building, or bridge, I'm sorry, I think we need to make improvements in there, enhance that. And with all her information she had, I even made contact with Steve Harmon. Mm-hmm. He's got whirls and whirls and gobs of pictures of how that whole downtown area on the south side just was vibrant.
And he's kind of our local historian.
Yes,
he has an archive of photos.
I invited him to come to the meetings and be a part of the task force committee. I haven't heard back from him, but I think it would be fantastic if we could see all that history, along with the history that Natasha works at the library. So she educates herself through all that information that she has available to her. Those two together would be an astronomical asset to our committee, not just to our committee, but they have a world of knowledge that a lot of people can learn from and educate our other people, and then they can see, well, this can happen again. And what's that saying? History repeats itself. Mm-hmm. Let's reinvent that wheel again and see what we can come up with. And with South Hutch, they might be on the other side of the bridge, but they can be a part of that. We can work together and enhance both parts, South Hutchinson and Hutchinson South Side.
If people don't understand the dynamics, if they don't realize the dynamics of a place like Hutchinson, the south part of town, there is a feeling that it's been neglected, that It's been kind of ignored in a lot of ways, and that most of the growth and development has happened on the north side of town. But that wasn't always the case. There was a feeling at one time, that the south part of town was the lively part of town. It was where all the downtown businesses were. Main Street was very vibrant. Communities had a lot of cohesion, and they had events all the time. And you talked a little bit about that history and about wanting to kind of restore that in the community.
Yes. I was talking to you earlier that I remember coming down B Street to get here this morning. There was a bicentennial event that went on, and I believe it was 1977 or 76. I was a little girl back then, but I remembered it having a parade, and they closed off B Street, and from Adams to Main Street, they had events going on. And there was a wide variety of people there. There were Hispanics, there were African-American people, there were white people, whoever was there. I mean, it was just fantastic. That's what we need to get back to. And I believe with having people encouraged, and a lot of people told me too, well, we can't make people buy buildings on the south side of town and put businesses there. No, we can't. But we can enhance it and make it look better, mm-hmm. to attract those people. It really kind of upsets me a lot of times when I have young parents younger than I, or even my age, come and say, well, we encourage our young kids to leave Kansas, Hutchinson, and go off other places because they wouldn't make it here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, you can. If you had a voice and if you were to invest into your community, maybe, because a lot of people end up coming back here when they retire or when they start raising a family because Hutch is the place to be. Well, make it even better, you know. So I encourage people, come back, see what you can do, be that voice. It only takes one person to lead another person, and then it continues on. You lead another person and another person and another person, and it can be done.
And that kind of grassroots movement where it's on the ground individuals making a difference, that's something Southwest Bricktown's been doing for quite some time, since
Yes.
the neighborhood's been kind of reestablished several years ago. Talk to me a little bit about that. There's a few things we should mention. It is a largely Hispanic community.
Yes, it is.
Right? And has been for years and years. So talk to me a little bit about how that community spirit or that community connection comes out during meetings, events, things like that. Is that a topic of conversation to say, how do we elevate our identity? How do we remind people that we're here? How do we do things that showcase what we have in this community?
Well, in my own personal opinion, my heritage, the Mexican American people, they're very soft spoken. They don't draw attention to themselves. That's how I see our district. But people like the ones that are in the committee are very vocal and very involved. We do have people like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the opportunity to have a lot of people be my mentors, one of them being my cousin, Francis Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
We had the mayor, Mr. Jim Martinez. I can name a lot. A lot come from my church, which is Our Lady Guadalupe, that's located in South Hutch.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of mentors there. My own personal mentor is my father. He was very, very involved, very outspoken, like myself,
Yeah.
and he stood up for what he believed in. And I carry that to heart. I really do. I only speak when I'm really feeling strong about something. And I am so proud because I have a son that I'm trying to get involved in the community. He is now involved in the Southwest Bricktown community events. And Adam is 35, 36 years old. And I fed what's that? You can lead a horse, but you can't lead him to the water. I can't.
You can
remember
lead
how
him to
that-
water, but can't make him drink, right?
So it makes me proud that he's taken that role on. And that's what made me happy. And I think, if I can do it with my own son, surely someone else can take the cue, and in the same age group, the generation can take over. A lot of the people, what makes us work is that we're very close-knit, family-oriented. And I think that makes a big, big difference. We may not be outspoken, but we stay together.
Mm-hmm.
We stay together and we work together, and we're a hard bunch of working people. So that, I think, is our core, and we've made it known. We've had several events, small events. Our biggest event was the Fiesta back in September of last year. We didn't know if we were going to have a good source and outcome, but that it came together fine. And
you had a big turnout
we
for
had
that,
a
right?
fantastic turnout, and that was our purest and strongest point, saying that we can make this happen. We can make anything happen. And we have another event coming up in May 7th, the Cinco de Mayo. We were asked, we were just going to do this event, which was in September, and then the Cinco de Mayo, but we've been asked several times over and over, when's your next event? When's your next event? So people know, and they recognized us. And I think that's had a big impact on us going to the city too for the Woody Seat. They know that we're going to be there and that we're going to be a voice no matter what.
So we talked a little bit earlier too. When I was at the Fiesta last September, I heard a lot of people talking about how we used to do this all the time. We used to have events like this. We used to have parties in this parking lot, and it would be monthly or weekly or whatever during certain times of the year. And it seems, as I was listening to you talk, that one of the things I hear is that advocacy or speaking up for a group of people or a neighborhood doesn't necessarily start with that advocacy. It might start with building that identity and with around something like an event or several events throughout the year to kind of create a feeling of or a sense of belonging. Would you say that's right?
Yes, I would. You took the words right out of my mouth. It makes a big, big difference. We've proven ourselves. We want to continue proving ourselves, but yet at the same time, it doesn't have to be just us. It can be throughout. We got several different districts. We have the historical. Well, anyway, there's several different districts that have had events, but none as grand as ours was.
Yeah.
We are very, very proud for what we've accomplished. We are very, very proud that we've had people in our surrounding area, businesses that they know they're here, but they don't use on a regular basis because they forget about their existence, support us. The community support was fantastic. I mean, I was just really, really shocked. I shocked myself because when I went door to door and they made phone calls, I thought, when they said, yes, we already sent the check, I thought, oh, it was fantastic. It was very, very, and all you have to do is ask.
Yeah.
Someone says, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, how are you going to have an answer to that stupid question if you don't ask?
Yeah.
So I'm very happy and proud to be a part of this and will continue until I can't. So.
Yeah. Now, so from that, I mean, we had that in September, and then there's been ongoing meetings with Southwest Bricktown, mostly to talk about what needs need to be addressed in the community, right? I mean, when you have those meetings, it's to look at the community,
Right.
look at the neighborhood, and say, what are we hearing? What are we seeing? What do we want to do? But that, as that morphed into this opportunity to speak up on behalf of the neighborhood on an issue, it does seem like because you had these other pieces in place, you were able to mobilize whenever there was the need to speak up on an issue that might affect
Right.
the community. How do you see that strengthening the community going forward as you're able to advocate for yourselves at the city government level? What sort of things do you imagine might happen later down the road? Will this sort of thing be a topic of conversation that continues? Will there be other projects that you think maybe the community ought to advocate for?
I think, yes, I do. I think Hutch and Harmony is a perfect example. They, and NAACP, whenever there's a need, we should be able to step up. And even though it may not be our war, we can still be a part of it and be supporters. And I think that's what makes a community strong, to have all types of supporters available and to put their input. And if you have one strength more than the other in another part, do your part. Do your part. And I think that would strengthen any community, any group, any action.
So I want to make sure I understand what kind of hear you saying is if different communities kind of build themselves up a little bit, then they're able to lend support to other communities when they need that help too, right? And they in turn can lend support to you when you need help.
Right. It depends on all your connections. The more connections you have, the more well-known your stance on a subject, That's how I got involved. This really impacted me and more where I lived at. So I took the chance to say, okay, I want to educate myself on this. You mentioned how I worked on the school board it's probably been over 8 years ago, maybe even longer. I took part in that because it was of interest to me when they were trying to rezone. I stood up for Avenue A when they was going to close it down. That was because my kids went there, my grandkids went there. And, whatever interests you is something. Don't think that, I can't say anything or I'm too shy. Well, it only takes one person to speak up and others will follow.
I think this is an important point that I want to stick on for a little bit. People do have the idea that when governments make a decision that they just have to deal with it. When other things happen and decisions are made, that often we feel like we don't have a choice or a voice in that. But you're proving, and you have proved over time, that's not necessarily true.
No.
You can stand up to some of those things, and you can make sure that you're being considered in the equation, that you're being part of the solution and not just having things done to you. How do you've experienced that over your time, but how do you get other people who feel that way to understand that?
The passion.
Yeah.
The passion. I've been called a hellraiser, but that's not my purpose. My purpose is to show you, like you said, that I do have a voice. We do have, and the city, whether they listen or not, if you echo it enough, I think they will know, okay, well, maybe they're right. And that's what happened at the city council meeting when they said, well, we use the word transparency. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for you to turn over because we say to turn over. We just want more information and for you to be transparent about it. And in order to get that, then you have to show that you have the passion, the drive, and that you want to improve things along with them, but let's be transparent together.
And let's work, and let's work together
Yes.
on this, right? Don't just
Right.
come tell me what you're going to do.
Right.
Talk to me about what you want to do, and we can talk about why that may or may not work or how it's going to affect the community, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's like a marriage. It's a work in progress. A marriage between the government and their people of the community.
Yeah, and the need to keep communicating
Yes.
about what needs to happen there. And you made a point in here too that I want to talk about. We talked a little bit about the 5 different options, and option 5 on this, which is the routing traffic off on Avenue F. I think one of the Southwest Bricktown's concerns about that is not even necessarily that it's part of one of the options that the community in Southwest Bricktown indicates they want. But part of the issue is that according to the report, it hasn't really been fully studied.
No.
And your community group would like to see that
Yes.
studied fully before a decision's made.
Right. They gave 5 options. There's 1, 2, and 3, which is what the city wants with the roundabout. Number 4, half of the community in Southwest Bricktown want number 4, and then the half want 5. Well, we didn't even know there was an option 5 until we came to the city again and say, we want you to reconsider. And by the way, they were turned down 3 times for a grant to do the roundabout. That was another issue that we asked. We want to know why. Why were you turned down 3 times? Well, they said that they weren't contacted of the reason why. Well, we want to know why. I'm sure you can get that answer. So that was one of our proposed ideas. Please get us an answer why you were turned down 3 times. Another is that there was no information. I mean, the ball was kind of dropped halfway for option 5. There was a cost that they showed us, and there were some pros and there were some cons. But on the bottom of that con, it said that option hadn't been studied. So we want to know, if they can do that. And that's when I decided, okay, we'll back off. We're going to spend the money to observe, research, and give you more information.
And out of all the options, option 5 is the one that keeps the streets open.
Yes.
And that's why at least part of your membership in the neighborhood is supportive of that option, right?
Yes.
And of course, option 4 is the other one that keeps the streets open.
Right. There's a no bill just to maintain the bridges and keep them in proper order, which again, Jason, I think that we wouldn't be in this position, and we brought this to city's attention several times. We wouldn't be in this position if they didn't keep putting the issues of the bridge on the back burner. There was always something new that was more important than the reconstruction or the fixing of those bridges. And I think if that was done from day one, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in right now. Granted, I know sometimes there's not enough money in the budget. I understand that part. I'm not good with numbers, but I do understand when there's not enough money, there's not enough money.
Sure.
Things need to be cut. But that was, a vitality part of our town. Why wasn't it fixed from the word get-go?
And it's gotten in pretty bad shape over
Yes,
the years.
it has.
We had to close it for a while and do some work on it.
They did. And you know what? And those people rerouted with well, there was complaints, but they rerouted. It can be done, yes. But if we want to keep those bridges open, we need to make sure that that they're being maintained and taken care of properly. The roundabout's going to need repair and taken care of properly. I can tell you, since I've lived in this area and I've been married over 30 years, that for the longest time, and most of it known to me more recently with COVID, the upkeep and the maintenance of the grass cuttings and sidewalks have deteriorated immensely. Why? I know there's grants. I used to work for Hutchinson Community Foundation. I know there's grants. We need more people that want to be involved and part of that to apply for those grants and help the city or help whatever district they're from to make those grants available and useful.
And keep the community
And
looking
keep the
good.
community in proper shape. I mean, what's that saying? If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Well, I don't want to lose that part of town or lose any people to our area to become people of Hutchinson. I want it to grow.
Well, one of the things, talking about parks and things, one of the things I know has been part of the consideration in this is that if we do remove the bridge and the overpass, there is the potential that there could be a lot of green space created, some new
Yes.
parks or anything like that. Is that part of the conversation with the neighborhood group?
We've talked about it. That's on our back burner. If we lose out and we don't get either option 4 or option 5 after everything's come in, and we do have to do the roundabout, there's a lot of green space that's available. We would like to put that to use. There's been several options presented in our committee that we're looking at. I don't know that it would be done right away because, well, I don't know. They said that there would probably be a year to 3 year, I might be misspeaking here, by the time they finish with the roundabout and before it's even completely done. But, if as soon as we find out, then we'll be on the ball, and I'm hoping I can get enough people interested that they can help me with writing grants to get grants for keeping that green space. There was talk about a community garden. There was talk about a community center. There was a talk about having basketball goals, pickleball courts. Anything's possible. But you need to have the involvement and the persons that are willing to come in and help write those grants and see what's available.
You feel that additional green space would be another thing that could be that create that or kind of keep pushing that community spirit and cohesiveness, having a community park in your area?
Oh, yes. I know that there's a new pickleball court here somewhere in town. They've done fantastic. And there's basketball courts down on Main Street on 11th and Main. They've done fantastic. There's, you got to pique interest and you got to do what people have, family things that people can do, and recreation and parks are one of them. So, yeah, I think that the interest is there.
Talk to me a little bit about what you might say or what advice you might offer if there's another community group, not just in Hutchinson, but maybe anywhere in the state, and they want to start advocating for themselves and they want to start having a voice in some of the decisions that are being made. What sort of advice would you have to them? Or if you were going to them and they had brought you in to ask about how to help them get organized and do these sort of things, what would you say to them? What sort of advice would you have?
That's funny. I've recently became a para at a parochial school, and I see these kids on a daily basis, and some of them have issues to where they don't know how to either control their emotions or they're shy. And there's 3 words that I came to this particular little boy. I said, you know what? I want you to stop, and I'm going to tell you 3 words, and I want you to repeat these words when you're feeling bad about yourself or feeling down on yourself. And one is smart. You are smart. You are beautiful, and you are special. Those 3 words can work for anybody, and don't let anybody press you down with their thumb saying that you can't do anything. Those are words that my Father has embedded in my heart and in my soul and in my mind. When you think there's something worth standing up for, be that voice, be that person, and others will follow.
I think that's fantastic. And I think That's a great place to leave this message, because I really want people to remember that you are smart, you're beautiful, and you're special, and that you don't have to let people keep you down. If you believe in something, you can stand up for it.
Exactly.
Thank you for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank a few of the people who've helped make That Podcast and Hutch possible. My son Mitchell Probst wrote and recorded the music for the show. Jenny Brigette put together some great graphics and promotional art. And Chris Acker helps overcome my mistakes to produce a great sounding product every episode. That Podcast and Hutch is made possible through a collaboration between the Hutchison Arts and Culture Collective and Salt City Sound. They're working to bring resources and infrastructure to support art, music, and storytelling in our community. If you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to them at podcasts@saltcitysound.net. If you enjoy That Podcast and Hutch, be sure to subscribe and share it with all your friends. You can also help support this production by subscribing to thatguyandhutch.substack.com or by emailing me at thatguyandhutch@gmail.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next week.
A Salt City Sound production.